Okay, today we're going to do that from Ches Amud Beis. It's much easier than yesterday. We left off all the way at the bottom of Ches. Sorry, we're going to do that from Ches Amud Aleph. We left all the way at the bottom of that from Ches Amud Beis. So we're going to speak about when we bring the carbon tamid on a regular day. The carbon tamid was the carbon brought in the morning, and the carbon brought in the night, in the evening, towards the late afternoon. This carbon was the last carbon that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, to the exception of the carbon Pesach, which carbon Pesach was the only carbon that was brought after the carbon tamid. Says the Gemara at the bottom of the Ches Amud Beis. Tanur Rabbanim, we learn in a brayso. Tamid kedem lePesach. The carbon tamid is before the carbon Pesach. HaPesach kedem leKteres, and we bring the carbon Pesach before we bring the Kteres of the afternoon. And HaKteres kedem leNeres, and we bring the Kteres before we light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So basically, the carbon tamid was the last carbon brought, unless it was Erev Pesach, then we brought carbon Pesach afterwards. Carbon Pesach was always brought before the Kteres, and the Kteres was brought before lighting the candles. So lighting the candles in the Beis Hamikdash was the last thing that was done in the day's work. Why does the carbon tamid come before the carbon Pesach? We have a rule that the carbon tamid is the last carbon. Says the Gemara at the top of the Testament Aleph, Yuchad davar shenamar be'erev ubein harbaim. Regarding the carbon Pesach, Torah uses two terminologies that show one being brought at night. Torah says it should be brought Tizbach and Sapesach ba'arif, bring the carbon Pesach by night. And then another pasuk says, bring the Pesach towards the evening. So we have two terminologies that Torah uses regarding the carbon Pesach that should be by night. As opposed to the carbon tamid, the Torah only uses once the terminology should be brought by night. Said about the carbon tamid, so we see that Torah has put a special emphasis on the carbon Pesach that Torah mentioned twice. It should be brought by night. So therefore, we make the carbon Pesach later towards the evening, and the carbon tamid before that. That's the Gemara. If we have two terminologies that say to bring the carbon Pesach by night, why do we light them? Why do we light the menorah and bring the Kteres after the carbon Pesach? Since Torah used a terminology to be brought by night twice, so then we should bring both of them. We should bring the carbon Pesach should be the last thing done in the Beis Hamikdash by night. Why do we bring the carbon Pesach and then bring the Kteres and the lighting the candles? Yeah, again, says why don't we do the Kteres and the candles of the menorah before the carbon Pesach? Nigmul the Pesach, we should do the carbon Pesach. Why? Because because regarding Kteres and regarding lighting the candles, it only says bein harbaim once. But when it comes to the carbon Pesach, it says I use the terminology be'erev and bein harbaim, which means that Torah wants us to put a special emphasis on the carbon Pesach being brought by night. So we should do the last thing. Answers the Gemara Shani Hasam. Carbon Pesach is different than lighting the candles. Why? The Miyat Rachmana Eisei, regarding lighting the candles, Torah said extra words of Eisei. What does it mean? Eisei, the Tanakh we learn in Brayso. It says Ma'arav ad Beikar. It says in the pasuk we should light the candles from night till morning. Tein lo midasa, you should put inside the candles enough oil that it should be from night till morning. That it should be lit from the morning, from night until morning. So we learn that from there that the menorah has to be enough oil to be lit the whole night. Another thing that we learn out from that pasuk is, which is what's neged to us. There's only one aveda, which is kosher from night until day, which means lasts the whole night. Besides, the only aveda that lasts the whole night is the aveda the aveda of the menorah. So we see the menorah has to be the last aveda. My timer. Why doesn't the menorah have to be the last aveda? Amar Kraka says in pasuk Yarech Eisei Aaron Hovanav me'erev ad Beikar, that Aaron and his sons should light the menorah from night until day. Eisei, there acts the extra word Eisei. The only aved that's done through the whole night is, or done by night, is the menorah, as opposed to any other aved in Beis Hamikdash, should be done before night. And therefore, even though it says that the Korban Pesach should be brought by night, we have an extra word in the pasuk regarding menorah to teach us that menorah should be the last avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore we light the menorah after the Korban Pesach. If so, we only have a pasuk regarding lighting the menorah by night. Why did we say that we also bring the ketores after the Korban Pesach? Answers the Gemara, we have a pasuk that connects the candles to the menorah to ketores. It says in the pasuk of Alas Anus Haneres Ben Abayim Yaktir. And it says you bring the ketores the same time of lighting the candles. And since we light the candles after the Korban Pesach, we also bring the ketores after Korban Pesach. So the general seder in the Beis Hamikdash was first you bring the Korban Tamid. Korban Tamid usually in the regular day is the last thing besides lighting candles and the ketores. If it's Erev Pesach, we bring the Korban Pesach after the Korban Tamid, and then we bring the ketores, and then we light the candles of the menorah. Lighting the candles of the menorah was the last avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, which was done during the day. As the Gemara, V'tanya Kikushan, you have a brayso that says Tamid Kedim Lekteres. We have a brayso that says that you bring the Korban Tamid before ketores. Ketores Kedemus Leneres, and we bring the ketores before the candles. The Neres Kedim LePesach. You have a brayso that says that Korban Pesach comes after lighting the candles of the menorah. We asked as a question, theoretically, if Korban Pesach, it says two terminologies in the pasuk to be done by night, that should be the last avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. And so now we're saying we actually have a brayso that says that. We have a brayso that says that we should bring the Korban Pesach the last thing. Why? Because Yochad Davar Shenemar Be'erev Ubein Arba'im. Because since the year uses two terminologies regarding evening, regarding the Korban Pesach, so we should make that the last thing because it uses two terminologies as opposed to menorah, which Torah only uses one terminology, should be done by night. We just answer that we have extra words of Isaac. What is this brayso that says that Korban Pesach should actually be done the last thing? Use the word Isaac for. Ask the Gemara Aksiv Isaac. We just have the whole thing that it says Isaac. Isaac come to exclude that even though regularly the Korban Pesach should be the last, but regarding candles, is the extra word of Isaac, which means that dafka lighting candles should be done the last thing in the Beis Hamikdash. So how does this brayso that says that candles come before the Korban Pesach deal with the word Isaac? Answers the Gemara, Hi Isaac, this word of Isaac doesn't come to teach us for the menorah. It comes to teach us regarding any aveda of done inside the Kodesh. We can explain in a second. What are these avedas? Hakteres regarding Teres. Since regarding Teres, it says in the pasuk, since it says in the pasuk that when Aaron lights the candles, he should also bring Teres. I would have thought first nadik nedis bereisha. First, he should light the candles of Hadar. So some of the pasuk when Aaron lights the candle, he should bring the ketores, which was mashma that first he should light the candles and then he should bring the ketores. So made Rachmana Eisei. So Terry said extra word Eisei. Eisei is to teach us that dafka, even though it says in the same pasuk that you should bring ketores together with lighting the candles, since it says Eisei, is to teach us that first you should do the ketores and then you should light the candles. Ella bein arba'im mektiran. What do we do? The words Ben Arba'im, that you should bring the ketores after. The Torah says clearly in pasuk you should bring the ketores after the candles. This is what the Torah wants to say. The Eden the madik neres ta makatra ketores. Torah doesn't mean to say you should bring the ketores after lighting the candles. Torah means to say that when you light the candles, the ketores should have been already brought up. So now we've answered the question that according to that brayso you bring Korban Pesach the last. That which you use the word Isay for. Isay is used to tell us that you bring the candles, you light the candles after you bring the ketores. So we have a machlekes tanoim over here when we bring the Korban Pesach. According to one brayso, we bring the Korban Pesach before we light the candles, after the Korban Tamid, but still before we light the candles. Another brayso that says, no, Korban Pesach is the last Korban that's born in Beis Hamikdash, if it's on our Pesach, and therefore even after we light the candles, we still bring the Korban Pesach. Now we're going to continue expanding on the Seder of the Aved and Beis Hamikdash. We learn a brayso like this. The only thing that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash before the Tamid Shachar was the ketores. Regarding the ketores, it says Babeker. Terry uses two terminologies regarding bringing the Potash in the morning, and therefore v'yuktam davar, v'yuktam Potash, davar shenamar babeker. We do the Potash because regarding the Potash it says that it should be done in the morning twice. It says regarding the Potash that you should bring it in the morning, but Terry says babeker twice, which means extra emphasis on bringing it in the morning. But regarding the carbon tamid, it only says bring in the morning once. So we see Torah put extra emphasis on the Torah being brought in the morning. So we bring Torah even before the carbon tamid shall shach. And the Brisa finishes off the ein lachadav shemisakev achat tamid shebein abayim. And the only thing that's brought, the last thing, the only thing that's brought after tamid shebein abayim is elak Torah. And there it says lighting the candles and Torah or Pesach and Pesach. Mechusik Yippurim of Pesach, and so too a Mechusik Yippurim of Pesach. So we just specified the Kabbalah over here that the Brisa says that in the morning the first carbon that's bought is the carbon tamid, besides the Torah, because the Torah says to make it twice. And in the evening, carbon tamid is usually the last carbon. Besides, if there's a carbon Pesach, then you bring in the carbon Pesach after carbon tamid, according to this Brisa. So too, the Torah comes after the carbon tamid shebein abayim. So to like the candles comes after tamid shebein abayim. And the Gemara the Brisa adds one last prat, mechusek yippurim on erev Pesach. Mechusek yippurim is like someone is a metzora or is a zav that became tamid, and then he becomes tired. So he goes to mikveh on the seventh day, and he has to wait to shkia on the seventh day. But he's only tired completely when he brings a carbon. So he's tired, but he's not tired completely until he brings a carbon. Now the problem is, if it's erev Pesach, he has to bring a carbon Pesach. So what if it's erev Pesach and it's erev Pesach and he shows up to the Beis Hamikdash with his carbon? So we're going to tell him, oh, you can't bring carbon Pesach yet because you have to bring a carbon. But the only carbon you bring after the carbon tamid is a carbon Pesach. So you can't bring the carbon Pesach until he brings this carbon. So the Brisa says that this carbon is an exception, and we bring it even though usually we do not bring other carbonas besides the carbon Pesach after the carbon tamid. But this carbon of the carbon tzara is an exception because this makes him tired to bring the carbon Pesach. Shetebel Shenis goes to mikveh, and then he can bring Beichel Spitzchalav, but then he can bring carbon Pesach and eat it by night. Rabbi Shmuel b'nei Rabbi Yechon and Breika, Rabbi Shmuel the son of Rabbi Yechon Breika says, Af mechusik yipunim b'shad yimei sashon. Even on a regular day, not only for carbon Pesach. Carbon Pesach, if he doesn't bring carbon Pesach, it's a chiyuv kares. And therefore, there's a big reason for us to make an exception and say that he could bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. But Yishmael and Breika says, no, even on a regular day during the year, the carbon tamid is usually the last carbon. Besides, if the Masechta wants to bring his carbon, then he could bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. What shetevel the eicha b'kach and the because then he could go to mikveh and that night already start eating eating kachin and be a regular time. So we have Machlekes Tanakama and Rabbi Shmuel. Tanakama says only on erev Pesach are you able to bring is mechusik yippurim, is Metzora allowed to bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. On a regular day, a Metzora cannot bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. On the other hand, Rabbi Shmuel ben Breika says that even during the year, mechusik yippurim could bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. So we're going to delve into the reasoning of their argument. According to Tanakama's reasoning, it's understood why Dafka on erev Pesach and mechusik yippurim could bring a carbon. Why? Because Yahweh say the Pesach sheyesh beikaris, yitzcha say ashlama shem beikaris. We have on the one hand a mitzvah say to bring the carbon tamid, the last carbon. On the other hand, we have a mitzvah say to bring a carbon Pesach. Which mitzvah say is stronger? So the mitzvah say to bring carbon Pesach is stronger than the mitzvah say to bring a carbon tamid the last. Why? Because mitzvah say of carbon Pesach, if you don't do it, you chayav kares. So therefore, the asay of bringing carbon Pesach pushes away the asay of bringing carbon tamid the last, and therefore this mechusik yippurim, this metzora or zav, that he has to bring his carbon. If you're going to tell him that he can't bring his carbon because we have asay to bring carbon tamid the last, he's going to be over on kares. So therefore, the kares pushes away the mitzvah say of bringing carbon tamid the last. So after by carbon Pesach, we bring a carbon, we make exceptions to the rule, and we bring a carbon. We bring a carbon after the carbon tamid. So that's understood if it's only regarding the carbon Pesach. But according to Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yechon ben Breka, who says that even if it's not Pesach, even if it's on a regular day, we bring a carbon of a Masechta and a Zav after the carbon tamid. So why would we do that? My only the hayasei. Why is that carbon? Why is the mitzvah say of bringing a carbon tamid? Why is the mitzvah say of bringing a Masechta, bringing his carbon any stronger than the mitzvah say to bring the carbon tamid the last? So answers the Gemara. Amar Ravina, Amar Chisda. Ravina answered in the name of Chisda. Hacha b'chata sa'if askina. Over here we're speaking about that he already brought his carbon. Elam. He's coming to bring one of the karbanos he had to bring is chata sa'if. The Masechta has to bring 3 karbanos when he becomes tar. He has to bring a carbon Eila, he has to bring a carbon ashram, and he has to bring a carbon chata sa'if. Now chata sa'if was a carbon that was not brought on the mizbeach. All they did was they would switch the blood on the mizbeach, but it was not brought on the mizbeach. And therefore, sheina mizbeach elodama, the only thing the mizbeach eats from it is the blood of the bird, and therefore Rabbi Yechon ben Breka's reasoning is that even though regarding other karbanos we can't bring a carbon after the carbon tamid, but chata sa'if is an exception. Chata sa'if isn't brought on the mizbeach. Since chata sa'if isn't brought on the mizbeach, the Masechta could bring a chata sa'if even after the carbon tamid. That's one way of answering his reason. If Papa says, why do you have to say that he already brought his carbon, his other karbanos already? You can even say chatas behemoth. You can even say that the Masechta was a rich man and he was able to bring an animal, and therefore we do bring his chatas on the mizbeach. So why does Bechon and Mebreka say that we bring the chatas on the mizbeach? We can't bring any karbanos after the carbon tamid, because Maila Melina Bereishus mizbeach. We don't mean that you actually bring the carbon on the mizbeach. What we did was that they would track the carbon and bring the meat to the top of the mizbeach without putting in the fire yet. So it's already, and they would switch the blood. So it's already as if the carbon was brought on the mizbeach. And then, on the one hand, the Masechta is tar now because his carbon is right next to the mizbeach. On the other hand, we didn't bring any karbanos after the carbon tamid because we didn't put the meat on the mizbeach of this Masechta's carbon. As the Gemara, a Masechta also has to bring a carbon asham. And how can you bring a carbon asham after the carbon tamid? So regarding the bird, we said bird is fine. I probably added even regarding a behema, it's also able to bring after the carbon tamid if you don't bring it on this beach, you just leave it at the top. So but what do you do regarding a carbon asham? So Bishlam would have Papa, according to that Papa, so we can answer the same answer regarding carbon chatas. How do the maiden law? You can shach the carbon chata, the carbon asham, and leave it at the top of the mizbeach. Rav Chisda, but according to Rav Chisda, who said that Rabbi Yishmael ben Breka was speaking about dafka bringing chata sa'if, dafka bringing a bird on the mizbeach. What can you say regarding the carbon asham? If Chisda answered that Rabbi Yishmael ben Breka was speaking about dafka bringing a bird on the mizbeach, bringing a bird on the mizbeach, we're able to bring after the carbon tamid. Because bringing a bird on the mizbeach, we don't actually market the bird, we just switch the blood. But there's another carbon he has to bring, which is a carbon asham. So what does Rav Chisda do with that? So answer the Gemara Amni, you could just answer Shekarav Hashami, that he brought his carbon asham ready. And he's just left to bring his bird. So the Gemara asks, how can you say that? But he also has a carbon oila which he has to bring. And what are you going to answer me? You're going to tell me he brought the oila already? If you're going to tell me that he doesn't have to bring an oila is only extra, and therefore he doesn't have to bring it before becoming tired, he can bring it the next day. But Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, Shmuel says, that the oila is ma'akavim from becoming tired, so he needs to bring a carbon oila also. So why can you just tell me that he brought the carbon oila earlier, and he's just left to bring chata sa'if, bring the bird? If you're going to tell me already, shakar ve'las, you're going to tell me that he brought his carbon oila already, that you can't tell me. Is he able to bring a oila? Is he able to bring a oila before he brings the carbon chatas? But Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, the pasuk comes to teach us, if you're going to tell me that he has to bring the carbon chatas before the oila, it says in pasuk, says in pasuk that the carbon oil comes after the carbon chatas. So you can't tell me the carbon chatas comes before the carbon oil comes before the carbon chatas. Allah zebnei the which a pasuk is teaching you is l'chol chatas. For every carbon chatas, you can miss the chalelis abaysimon. You always have to bring a carbon. If a person has to bring like a matzah, on the one hand he has to bring a chatas, on the other hand he has to bring a oila. So he has to bring the chatas first. And the halach is even regarding chatas ta'if, even regarding the bird chatas, he has to bring it before the carbon. So if so, you can't tell me if this. How is there a situation that a person, according to the Masechta, a person is only bringing a matzah is only bringing a chatas ta'if, which isn't brought in the mizbeach, and he still has to bring, and he still hasn't brought a carbon. The chatas comes before carbon, so the whole answer doesn't fit in. So answers the Gemara, Rav answers, Shani Eilas Matzera. Regarding the Eilah of Matzera doesn't have to be before the Chatas. Why? Because Achman Amar, the Torah said regarding the Eilah of Matzera, Hala Kainis Eilah. Says in the Pasuk, the Hala means it should be brought up, Lashon Oven. Oven means it was brought up. What does that mean? It means that even though Shehala Kvar, that regarding Matzera, he's able to bring the Eilah before the carbon Chatas. Therefore, in this case, we had the question: how can the Matzera bring his carbon after carbon chatas? I bring his carbon after the carbon tamid. The answer is very simple. We're speaking about a chatas ha'if, which isn't brought in the mizbeach. He has to bring carbon oila. So he brought a carbon oila already, even though usually we never bring a carbon oila before a carbon chatas. In this case, it's an exception because the Matzera is able to bring a carbon oila before he brings a carbon chatas, because it says in the pasuk, "V'hela" means he already brought it up already.